Everybody for coming and joining us for our capital workshop today. We're going to keep this kind of relaxed. We've had a lot of meetings here lately. This is kind of how I see this playing out, and we're going to be sort of flexible. I'm going to just do a little bit of brief history of how we got at this point. Asked Mr. Van Huss if he would to go over the presentation that he did yesterday for us. We've had a committee that's been meeting to kind of talk about the projects, especially centered at Elizabethton High School, and we want to get Dr. May caught up on that. Ms. Armstrong and Ms. Baker have been at the committee meetings with us. So after Mr. Van Huss does his presentation, then we're going to just open it up for board members to make any comments, ask any questions, whatever we want to say, and that's about what today's about. It's just about communicating within the board of where we stand with our projects. So brief overview, just get everybody caught up who's keeping score on anything. In 2011, I think it was April 2011, the board met and we started talking about capital projects. It was a 3-2 vote that the projects would be the moving the stadium to the current Elizabethton High School and sort of making that a cohesive athletic complex. That opens up the potential at some point to build the 8-room addition at T.A. Duggar in the back so that we would make the building ADA compliant, give us more restrooms, more classrooms, and then we are looking at building a new band choral room and taking the existing room and making classrooms. We approached council several times. Nothing really happened this past year. With the help of a local businessman kind of speaking on our behalf and kind of putting the idea to reissue the bond, we now have $5 million. Our original request was for $9 million, and then that sort of has moved down, and we wound up with $5 million, which we're incredibly grateful for, but we can't do all projects for $5 million. So the board, we are where we are. We put a committee together basically because we wanted to get a kind of a cross-section of the population of different stakeholders to sort of look at what the project should be. We met, the committee has not made a recommendation as of yet, but everyone was kind of in a consensus that working through the complex at the high school and keeping everything there, those two projects have the most concrete numbers and we have the best potential to stay within the $5 million. So we've been looking at that. Mr. Van Huss, Mr. Weems, Mr. O'Hare, Mr. Hutchins, Mr. Pless have all been looking at different ways to move this project around a little bit. And if everybody doesn't mind, for those of us that were at the committee yesterday, we're going to let Mr. Van Huss kind of go over that again. And then afterwards, we will have comments and questions from the board. Is that okay with everybody? All right, Mr. Van Huss, whenever you're ready. And you can take as much time as you need. Thank you.
Bless you.
Okay, I think we're about ready here. Again, for those of you that were here yesterday, we'll try to do a brief recap of what we talked about. Let's see, I'll try to put maybe that you can see that one a little bit better. Again, the 3 projects that we were directed by the board about 2 years ago to look at are the 3 that are pictured here. The potential for a stadium, a classroom addition at T.A. Duggar Junior High School, and a band and classroom addition at the high school. And as we talked yesterday, the 3 things that we were looking at from an administration standpoint, I certainly don't want to speak for the board, but from an administration standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we were within the $5 million budget and that we made sure that when we finished whatever we were able to do, that we felt like they were quality projects and had been done in a manner that everyone in the community would be proud of those facilities. And then we also wanted to be able to improve or maintain the facilities that we currently have. For instance, we didn't want to do anything that would damage softball, track, any of those other programs that we have, especially when we look at the potential for an athletic complex. So those are the things that, again, as an administration, we felt were prudent to keep in mind as we looked at the different options. And we talked about this was the original option with a stadium and track area where the current track is at the high school. This configuration would require us to move the baseball field and maybe in the future be able to do a field house. And as you can see here, there's the band room addition and classroom addition. Again, it's a band addition, and then it's a conversion of the old band room to classrooms. So it's a construction/renovation project, I guess the best way to describe it. The issues with these projects, again, driven by the budget, we have $5 million. And this stadium and this band room, those both total to more than $5 million. So therein lies our problem. There's not enough money to do what we had proposed here. In addition to, again, not harming a program, if we move the baseball field, we would have to reconstruct this area. So that's where we were. When we realized the budget numbers, where we were on these, we began to look at other options. And this page here showed what a low-end stadium, similar to in the location that you just saw on the last slide, and a cost for that associated with that, and then there was a mid-level cost for that. The problem with both of these, at the end of the project, none of us as an administration, or I think the community, would be very pleased with what we were able to provide with that money. And let me also say, as an administration, our opinion is it's not the right thing to do to take this $5 million and spend it all on a sports complex. Our goal is to try to find a way to do 2 of these 3 projects. So as we move forward, we started looking at different locations for a stadium, and what we started looking at is if we take the track out of the construction. So there's some positives there. The first positive is the fan experience. If I've heard one thing from people in the community, what they've told me, and I think the attachment with Brown Childers Stadium is the intimacy, the closeness that you feel to the action there. You're close to the field. If we include a track in this area, that moves both sets of stands further away from the field. So if you're there to watch a soccer game, you'd almost be easier to watch it on TV. You know, if they were videoing it, you just feel like you're so far and you're so detached from the game. And, you know, athletics are full of emotion, band as well. When the band performs, you can't help but get emotional and those kinds of things. So the closer you are, the better atmosphere, the higher level of enjoyment. You know, the players feed off that. The band players feed off that emotion that they feel. So this arrangement makes that experience, it just enhances that experience. The negative here, as you can tell, we lose the track. And if you remember the 3 things that I mentioned before, we would be going backwards in the area of track. And we didn't feel like that's what we want to do. But we continue to look for different options where we could place the stadium. So it's the same area, but again, you lose the track. Will it fit? Yes, but we lose the track. One thought we had was, okay, if we put the track project off, and once we're ready to start the T.A. Duggar project, tear down the home grandstands and put in a regulation track at that site. The problem with that is the track won't fit between the visitors grandstand and the existing campus, the school. It actually would overlap into the crow's nest area as well as a portion of the cafeteria. So you still can't fit a regulation track in the site at Brown Childers. So then we began looking at other options on this campus, which you've seen 2 so far. Here's another one. Again, same location, same problem. We lose the track. It fits here on the baseball field. It fits very nicely. Again, the problem is now you lose your baseball field. And if you look around the city, there's only one other full-size baseball field in the city of Elizabethton, and that's the Twins field. And currently, on the baseball field in this location, the junior varsity and the freshman team practice and play their games right here. So if we take this space, we have to find somewhere else for them to do that. Either the Twins field. The only other potential option would be going back down to the fields behind the jail. The problem is the Little League, the field that's full size, they've modified that for Little League, so the fence is considerably shorter. The field that we put in at T.A. Duggar is not adequate for high school students. It's great for junior high students, but not for high school students. So therein lies the problem. You know, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't think we as administration feel comfortable harming baseball. In effect, we may be killing the program by eliminating that field. So here's a location. This location takes the band field and the portion of the track and the softball field. And again, when you talk about cost, there's nowhere else to put the track, and really there's nowhere else to put the softball field either. Plus, we don't have the money to reconstruct those areas. So we continue to look. There it is back on the baseball field with a 90-degree orientation change. And you can see it's very close to the edge of the building right here. So it would be a very tight squeeze in that location. Same area, we turned it 45 degrees and looked at the possibility, is there some way we could incorporate a track and a baseball field, which obviously that doesn't work. If you eliminate the track and put the baseball field, yes, it fits, but again, you've eliminated the track. We looked at different kinds of arrangements where we could fit those. The problem with all of these is it eliminates a program. One thought was, okay, we can slide the field over here to the parking lot. That preserves baseball, track. We talked about the fact for additional parking, so we looked at this whole area and moving softball here. That looks like a feasible and a reasonable possibility. The only thing at this point in time, we don't have the funding to do all of this either. So what we've talked about, there's a different orientation. What we've talked about is leaving the softball field in this area, the band practice field here, and look at putting additional parking in here, which the more you think about it is great as well. We could split up some of the student parking. We could have a portion over here and a portion in the back. So when you're talking about release in the afternoons, you're splitting up that traffic flow, whereas right now it's all of this traffic going through two exits. So now you can split some of that traffic flow onto Jason Witten Way. We looked at the hospital property. Again, that's not our property, that's the city's. It would be presumptuous for us to assume that they would give us that property, but we just looked at the possibilities. Could you fit a baseball field? Could you fit the stadium there? And, you know, in this arrangement and this arrangement, yes, you can fit the baseball and football field. However, there's quite a bit of work that would have to go on there as well. You're further away from parking. And again, you know, I'm not sure the city would even consider giving us that piece of property to begin with or selling it to us, again, which we don't have the money to do. So then we looked at, okay, if we go back to the concept with the football stadium in this portion, a portion of it in this, right now, this dead area where the old tennis courts were and the parking lot, we looked at this orientation. And again, this one makes more sense to us. At the beginning, it didn't, but the more you look at it, it does. Because of the things that you're able to maintain, at least in this location, we're not harming baseball. We're not hurting track. We're not hurting softball. We're not hurting the band practice field. The additional parking here makes up for what we would lose here. So that's our thought process. We did a comparison here of the parking sites available, parking spaces available on the site, I should say. And the existing parking that's available is 513 spaces. The addition of This lot in the back would generate 255 spots to counteract the 90 that we would lose by building the stadium in that location, and so we would have a net gain of about 90 parking spaces on campus. This stadium arrangement, removing the track, put some things back in there that were out before that we obviously need. The low level and the mid-range budgets I showed you before did not have lighting, and obviously you have to have the lighting included. That's added back. This gives us a stadium capacity of around 3,500 people. So that's the positives in all these. So that's where we were with this arrangement on campus. This project, along with the band room and the parking, we feel gets us closest to the $5 million budget that we know that we have. I have spoken with a potential donor who has assured me if we move forward with this location, the band room, classroom, and the parking, that this individual will help us if there's a shortfall.
Did you give a price on that?
On what, ma'am?
Did you were you quoting a price on band room, parking?
According to Mr. Weems yesterday, the stadium as it's currently designed now is around 3.8. This parking would be around $300,000, and the band room classroom addition was somewhere around 1.6, 1.7. Again, there's some room in there for some things that we can do if you know, when the budget is going to be tight. One thing we would propose is we would construct the band room, and then the old band room conversion and renovation, we would try to do as much of that work in-house or possibly with prison, with inmate labor, to maybe lay some block and do some of those kinds of things. So of all the arrangements that we've talked about and shown, this arrangement gets us closest to being able to do two of the projects and do quality projects with them. All the other arrangements actually cost more. And as you know, yesterday we talked a little bit about the T.A. Duggar site, and I think we're all in agreement. Well, I say we're not all in agreement, but the majority of the people agree that the location that we're proposing at T.A. Duggar for the addition is the right spot. Again, the problem with that is you're tying into an older building, so if you look at all three of the projects, the stadium, the band room, classroom addition, and the T.A. Duggar project, Mr. Weems has stated that's the one that's most at risk, the one that has the largest potential for running into some unforeseen problems. And that would be, it doesn't matter where we would build it on campus, we would still have those issues because you're tying into a 70-year-old building. So,
okay, so the total of the high school projects would be?
That's, well, at this point, somewhere between 5 and 5.5.
5 and 5.
5.
5.5.
And that's the whole?
Yes, ma'am. That would be that'd be what you see here minus this field house. This field house would not be included in that.
Now, I don't know if I should ask a question yet, but is there any reason you couldn't start with the band room project and classroom and then move on to your other project at the high school, the stadium?
And the answer to that is no. That will be the board's. Obviously, that's your decision on where we go from there. Our stance is we're going to be able to do both of these, and we would look at doing construction on these at the same time.
Well, you really need those.
Well, let's let Mr. Manhus finish, and then you're going to talk as much as you get to talk as much as you want to.
That's the way my brain works.
At this point, from my standpoint, unless there's unless there are questions, I think that's kind of a summation of the presentation from yesterday, and I don't know, Ms. Brewer, if you want to talk about what went on in the meeting.
Sure. Yes. Mr. Alexander did provide everyone with minutes. You have minutes from meeting number 1, minutes from meeting number 2. We did have a lot of discussion yesterday. Again, as Mr. Van Huss indicated, most everyone is in agreement that they like the positioning of this stadium. We feel like there were certain things that everyone wanted. We wanted to have a certain amount of seats because it's pointless to go backwards. This is this is where band makes all their money is in concessions. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of people, hopefully spending plenty of money to keep the band program moving along. Mr. Wilson has talked repeatedly about the number of people waiting to get tickets for seats in Elizabethton for our games. It's a wonderful problem to have, but there were certain things that we wanted. The idea is that always we do things to make things better. So everyone was kind of, agreed that, and also everyone kind of understands that these two projects, because T.A. Duggar is such an unknown, that with $5 million that we have now, that we just contain everything to the Elizabethton High School campus, knowing that, and again, we talked about this, that in a couple of years we revisit the first bond, hopefully can get a little, get a little bit more money, and then take on T.A. Duggar, which almost needs to be a project in and of itself because of the unknown factors. We finally ended the meeting yesterday. City Council made a comment that they've had some concern from some people who want to know if it's more cost effective to renovate Brown Childers Stadium. And while everybody in our minds know that that's not the best case, we have instructed Mr. Weems and Mr. O'Hare to, they're spending about 2 weeks, and they're actually putting together what that would look like to tear down the grandstands, build something else, and whatever else that we would need to make Brown Childers Stadium a viable option for us. So in a couple of weeks, the committee is going to meet again and look over those numbers. That, again, was done for City Council because when people are calling saying, why are you wanting to move this, they wanted to be able to say it is more cost effective to build new than to renovate. So that's kind of where we left everything yesterday. Again, Mr. Van Huss always, when he starts this, to tell you that this idea, it always starts with take a breath and let me talk about it. And it's kind of one of those things, your initial reaction is, I don't know. And then after you sort of process it and you realize that football is important to football players, soccer is important to soccer players, baseball is important to baseball players, softball is important to softball players, track is important to track, and they're all important to us. So this actually gives us a sports complex at Elizabethton. Mr. Alexander mentioned yesterday the potential to have several events going on at the same time is wonderful. For economic value, and Dr. May has stressed this over and over again, it would be nice to bring people here. Mr. Wilson talked about the fact that the band, and Mr. Van Huss did as well, the band can actually have festivals and competitions here because we actually now have practice areas for them. So if you don't like sports but you love the band, this is a wonderful thing. So we kind of left yesterday with everybody, that liked this project. Again, everybody understands that at T.A. Duggar, the 8-room addition in the back with the 2-story, access to both levels is the way to go. That just makes sense. But then everyone understands that you do have to demolish the existing grandstands. We mentioned yesterday, I'm going to mention this again, Brown Childers Stadium is not going anywhere. It is still going to be there for everyone who loves to watch football and soccer and band there. You still can. They're just going to be younger because that would be the home of the Junior Cyclones. So for all of us that have nostalgia there, it's not going anywhere, and the original seats were always what are now the visitors to begin with. So that's where we were. That's where we left everything yesterday. I'm sure I've left out a lot of stuff, but I know people have a lot of things they want to say, so I'm going to open this up to board members to make your comments, say what you need to say, and whoever wants to go first, you're certainly welcome.
What happened to the other company that came here and did a presentation?
Yeah, they never, we spent about 2 months waiting for them, and they never got back to us about anything. So we kind of lost 2 months of quality time that we could have been working on this, waiting for this company. They just sort of went with the wind. So, yep, they never got back with us. So I'm guessing, I'm guessing they decided they did not want to do business with us. I don't know. But we kept waiting to get some confirmation. We didn't. So we waited a couple of months on that. That's what happened with that company.
But do we have any plans drawn for the band room other than what I saw on the chart up there?
Mr. Weems, he has just, what did he call those conceptual drawings?
At this point, all we have are conceptual drawings for all these.
Right.
He will not move forward and do detailed drawings until the board says this is something we want to do. I can tell you that Mr. Weems and I have met with Mr. Elliott and Ms. Googe about that area, and Mr. Weems has noted their concerns, the things they would like to see in that space, and he indicated to me that he thought that those were all fixes within the budget, and he's going to continue to work on that information as well. Since the majority of his time at this point conceptually has been on the stadium component because it's moved around and changed configurations.
We have the 3 options, and we've only seen one. Is there any way that you can present
Options for what?
options for the band and classrooms? And the other option was on television last night.
I don't understand what you're asking.
The 3 choices we had. Well, you had them here on the screen.
You talking about the T.A. Duggar project? Is that what
I'm talking about stadium, athletic complex, band room.
Are you talking about the money thing? There was the cheap end, the high end, and the mid. Are you talking about that, or what are you talking about?
Oh, but I'd like to have that. We have a choice of one or the board has the choice of voting to approve one of these options.
Well, we'll decide how we want to spend the money. Yes, we're either going to we decide what projects we're going to do. Absolutely.
Okay. What I'm saying is, and I'm probably not doing a good job, but what I'm saying is, can we not look at each of them and have a presentation? And just because the only thing I've learned is where are we going to put the stadium and the parking.
Well, part of that is, with T.A. Duggar, we all know that to build what the board and obviously, it was myself, Mr. Cooter, and Mr. Birchfield originally voted on these 3 projects, and it was the classrooms at T.A. Duggar in the back, but we have to move the grandstands. We have to tear down the existing grandstands to do that. There's no other way that we can do that. And, everybody yesterday talked about the fact that they do agree that that is the best place for that. I know you don't, but that meets all of our needs. And it keeps, I know Mr. Carter can talk about someone who's responsible for all the students at T.A. Duggar. They're not interested in another unattached building. They need restrooms. Yes. So this isn't something that we just made up. We've talked to all these people, and they've told us what they want, and Mr. Weems did this conceptual drawing. So we can't proceed at T.A. Duggar until we tear down the grandstands. We have to either move the football stadium, or we go with one side. And, everybody, we move the visitors to the we move home to visitors, and then we make some little tiny bleachers, which would kill the band program. Mr. Wilson talked about that yesterday. We don't want to hurt the band program because they make money off of concessions. So the best thing to do is to just move the stadium, and then, we have the band room. I don't know what other options we can look at. we've drawn them up, we've looked at them. I don't know.
Now, those 8 rooms at T.A. Duggar, they don't have to be in one big section, because I talked to Mr. Weems about that. But they've never drawn any plans showing maybe a couple of band rooms. Could you build a couple of science rooms?
Well, we really want the 2-story because we want to have access to that elevator for the entire.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know.
Well, you could, now, look at the one I had Richard pull for the 2000 plans. And definitely it could be done.
But that's not a 2-story addition, though, is it?
Oh, I'm not going with T.A. Duggar right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
More at the high school project.
Oh, okay. Now tell me about the high school, because I'm still at T.A. Duggar. So what are you talking about at the high school? What are you?
No, T.A. Duggar.
Okay. The thing that you're talking about at T.A. Duggar, was that a 2-story addition, though?
No, it was a 1-story. I think it was 1-story, but there's no reason it couldn't be made into a 2-story.
You're exactly right. There are several locations that you could build a building. But as I think was discussed yesterday, the most viable and the only option that meets all of the concerns that we have, there is one location, and that location is the one that we're proposing. Are there other places on the campus that you can do that? There absolutely are, and they're all in the front of the building, and none of them address the handicap accessibility to the entire building, and none of them will address the bathroom situation that our proposal addresses. 4 new restrooms, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom floor, that are accessible right in the middle of the building. And, you know, could you build 4 bathrooms out in the front? You sure could. But if I'm all the way down next to the auditorium, I'm sure not going to want to walk all that way. If it's right in the middle of the building, sure, that's great access. So, again, that's your decision on where the board wants to move it. As an administration, we've shown you, we've studied this. I've studied this for 4 years, not just when I've been around the board. This has consumed my time up here the last 4 years, and I can confidently say to this board that this is the best location for this.
Well,
okay, well,
no.
I'll wait till you get through.
I was just thinking, you really need to get some plans underway to correct that water flow in the back of T.A. Duggar.
This addition will take care of that because we're building there, and when you build, you have to take care of the stormwater. So we would do that.
Even if you don't build or anything, you really need to correct that water flow, because it stays really damp there on the back of that building.
Yes, it does. It's very damp in the stadium, I can assure you.
I
that.
taught back there for 10 years. I was out there measuring the water flow.
Okay. All right, I would like to see those older plans that was made back in 2000 and whenever, but as I say, I haven't seen those. The other things I wanted to bring up, I asked just for a little simple cover, not changing the subject about our football stadium, but just a cover or enclosed cover for Harold McCormick. And that was a good while back before this room was built, before the changes were made out there where we have after-school tutoring. And, of course, that money could have gone for that. That doesn't cost very much. But then, as you know, we still have a large number where all of our elementary schools need an addition. And, of course, I know we can't do that as well with this money since we got such a small amount. But we had plans that were made for those additions, and that would help keep our teachers off of carts. And when I see them on the carts, it makes me think of homeless people because they don't have classrooms. At the high school, even we're adding these rooms. I'm wondering if it will open up more space for them because we have a few teachers there that's using carts. And as a teacher, previous teacher, it's difficult to put all your materials on the cart and go from place to place. In some cases, you could lose papers. It's just nice for them to have their own room and for the students to be able to go in those rooms. Now, I know of one, I haven't been there visiting yet, but I'm on my way, but I know of one or two situations where there are on carts at the high school. And one is a Spanish teacher, and I'm sure there's one or two more. I thought there was about 3. But even with adding these classrooms, will that free up a little more space, or can we add 1 or 2 more rooms so we won't have as many on carts?
Can I answer your question? How many, the existing band room, how many classrooms will that, when we move that, how many classrooms will be in there?
We're talking about the potential of up to 5 spaces, with one of those being utilized by chorus, a combination of that and the band room. And talking with Ms. Googe, she would like to be able to utilize both those spaces in the band as well. So they may want to use one area for small group rehearsals and things like that. So, we're trying to work toward accommodating that. So, yes, that will alleviate some of that situation where you have people on cart. But I would say that in every building in our system, we have people on carts. And at the high school and junior high, it's been that way for several years. So, it's really no different at any of them, in that respect. As far as the cover goes, we have conceptual drawings for that. Mr. Weems did those. If you remember, it was from a very rudimentary, just a cover, to an elaborate drawing with classrooms and things like that. At this point in time, when the board directs us to do that, then, we'll build that. So if the board so chooses to do that, that's not, we don't make that decision. You do.
That's right. But I was just bringing that up to make mention that when we first started asking for these funds, it was for classrooms. And basically, they said the longest we had this on the chart for T.A. Duggar for the past, 4 years, 5 years. And, of course, this for Harold McCormick, this little cover was on there about 2 years before. And I feel that if we are going to keep our word, then our first objective should be for classrooms. And in looking at our plans, the plans are excellent for them. It's not that we don't need the stadium, but we do need the classrooms just as well. And I would like to see the drawings for the classrooms at the high school, if we're going to start with that first, before we look at the stadium for sure. And that way, at least there'd be a few more off of carts at that high school. So we'd have our choral rooms, we'd have our band room, and possibly some additional classrooms, which I would very much like to see before we do the stadium.
The drawings that we...
Wait a minute, I'm not quite through.
I apologize.
That's okay. And, of course, like I say, I just feel that the next project should be T.A. Duggar, since this is what we were emphasizing so much. And this is what we said we needed so much for that side. And this has been in the plans the longest. So, and there is a tremendous need there for classrooms at T.A. Duggar. We have a large, students have grown there, and of course we all know this, that we have a large group of students there. So in looking at this, I think we should keep our word and go for classrooms first. And that would serve the needs of our students as well.
Well, I think our city fathers and one mother, I think that they were under the impression in the city of Elizabethton was under the impression classrooms would be built first. And I'm in town. I'm everywhere. Crippled as I am, I'm everywhere, and I hear it. And That's what the people wanted with the classroom.
Okay, Mr. Alexander wants to say something.
I don't want to usurp Dr. May's comments, but let me inject a little bit of history here. To begin with, going back to the high school, in 73 and 74, the high school was built in a manner which some people would say half-baked, a halfway manner, because there was no softball field, there was no baseball field, and as you all know, for you people who've been in the gymnasium enough, they cut the gym in half with some value engineering. So it wasn't done properly to begin with, and so as a result, these people and the architects have attempted to have a quality product presented. And for some of us people here, of course, anywhere from 4 to 6 years have been working on this with architects who do this for a living. So the thing that concerns me the most about the proposal that's up here is that we need to make that track a runnable, if that, I may use that term. That's the thing I'm most concerned about right now. Our track and cross country people deserve to have a place on which to run, and I'm concerned about Mr. Weems and Mr. O'Hara now, as I understand, Mr. Van Hess, are looking at a way to make that at a minimum cost, I believe. But anyway, we as an administration, and I'm sure the architects, would like to be trusted on this, and if we continue to look at plans again and again and again, he who hesitates is lost. And so this is going to be put off more and more and more, and the mayor apparently felt yesterday that there was no way that we could be in that athletic complex by next year, and the architect disagrees with that. But anyway, I would like for the board to consider putting their faith in the people who, in this administration and the architects who have worked hard on this project, because it's almost insulting when people stand up and start talking about something that we've been working on for 6 years and have looked at it. And poor Mr. Van Hess has looked at this from every angle to the point he's almost blind. So if we hesitate any longer, folks, it's just going to be put off again and again and again. And as Ms. Brewer mentioned, it may not be done at all. We have the money. We are asking for the faith to be placed in what the architect is proposing. Again, the track is my concern.
Well, as I understand, today is just discussion, right? We're not making decisions. So I haven't been able to go to the Capitol Committee meetings. I didn't know that we were supposed to, or I might have tried, but I thought it was just a subset. So this is really my first chance to kind of come up to speed. The only thing that in your presentation that really stood out was the track. So I echo that my biggest disappointment was in seeing that an area that isn't going to be likely supported well will be left out. And I know in 1984 I graduated from that high school, and when I entered there in 1980 they said, oh, we just built this, but we're in a recession. And I still remember going to gas lines around that time, and you know, I know all of you do, but the argument was, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And so here we stand in 2013, and my children are now graduating and will graduate before attending a high school that has the promised track and being true to our word. That was on the agenda 30 years ago, to build a stadium. And that was something when I ran for office that I asked people about, and some had mixed feelings. There's a lot of nostalgia associated with our current Brown Childress Stadium. There's also a lot of people that have asked me, you know, why isn't it better? Why isn't it better? Why can't we run track? You know, why didn't we get turf? Why didn't we do this? Well, because things change, and they're not always top priority. So, you know, we've kind of put it off and made it not top priority for some time. We haven't had funding, and I'm still disappointed. I'm appreciative, but disappointed with the amount of funding that was provided us. I think that we deserved more. I think that we could have afforded more as a town, and I may be in disagreement, obviously, and I respect and defer, but I think that we could have done better. It seems that the school system is often viewed as a non-cash producing entity, and maybe the electric system or other things that might receive funding, it's easier to look on a balance sheet and see how that affects the city financially. And I'm not saying this to be offensive. I think that those people have looked at it, and probably from more angles than I have, but I'm seeing it from a school board member's view. So with all respect to their decision, the concern that I have is that the funding levels, this has been asked for years and years, and told that apparently before my time that we've prioritized these things. And unfortunately, we've come to an impasse, and the impasse continues to be, and has been for apparently 30-some years, is that a stadium is an expensive thing and doesn't have apparent value to education. But that's where I differ. I really think it does have a great value to education. If you come out tonight and watch Sullivan North and the Cyclones play, you'll see that it's senior night, and there'll be parents from all over town, and they're going to be involved and engaged. And these are young, generally young working parents who are taxpayers because they own property in the city of Elizabethton, and they're going to have their children there, and they're going to hope that their children who are graduating will go to college and return to the city. At least I do. I want my children back in the area buying property and paying property taxes that we can continue to grow this, and it won't show up on a balance sheet. I made this same argument to the city commissioners, and at one point, at least an abbreviated version of it. But I think that we sometimes don't view that investing in a bedroom community type education program. I think sometimes we don't see how much it contributes. You can put in stores, grocery stores, gas stores, things of that nature, and you can generate income. You can put in services that we can bill for. But unless you have people that live here, we're not going to continue to have anybody that utilizes those services. And, roads and infrastructure are paid for by people. And what is the number one thing that draws people to a community? And it's the school system. So for those of you who are funding us, I ask you to consider this as an investment in the future of this town. It attracts industry. It attracts everything that causes government to function and causes our citizenry to be able to live a productive life and get along. And the thing that Elizabethton has, I've worked in Johnson City. I've lived in Johnson City, but I grew up here, and I wanted to come back here. A lot of jobs are in Johnson City. A lot of our town, if you get up at 7:30 in the morning and start driving to Johnson City, you'll find that there's an exodus here between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. as people drive to the places where they earn their living. But they come here to live because of our school systems, because of the fact that we have a community that I think in general places God or community as a high value, or at least living a moral life in a way that is people get along for the most part. I think that the passion we saw in this community over decisions we sometimes make, be it about personnel or otherwise, is simply because people are invested in their community. Those same decisions are made in other school systems that are much larger, and you don't see the community turnout. But as difficult as some of those decisions were, I'm excited about the passion that people have for their school system. It is a great honor to serve those people, and I hope that we're doing it well. Part of that, to that end, is that we have received the potential to have quite a bit of money. Finally, after 30-some years, we have enough money to complete a project that we've not had, and it seems unethical to take a one-time and 30-year option and kind of do it in small projects that don't meet the big goals and prioritization of those. And to be true to our word, to me, from 30-some years ago when I was a student there, one of the things that was promised was having, an athletic complex that was on campus, that was part of our new system. And the students that went to school with me in that age category, Rita was a year ahead of me, and maybe she knows, but a year behind, I'm sorry, you're right. But those people can probably tell you that we're excited about having the campus completed too, at least I was, and the friends that are in that age group have told me that. And so I know I see it through my own rose-colored glasses. I'd love to see the details on the projects and the costs And like I said, I was disappointed that the one overall that we had looked at, we didn't have enough to fund it. But perhaps that's a good thing, because we should be good stewards with the public funds. And I know that when I've spoken with people who attended the Science Hill Games where they did incorporate a track in it, that has been their concern, is that they feel detached and it's almost too big. And I know I've attended some of the other, like Tennessee High, where you're closer in at the Stone Castle, and they're aging and they're rebuilding. I was there at the band competition where we took top honors last week. But in that sense of being close is very, very much there. And their track was built separate. But I'm fearful that we'll never build a track if we do this. I'm fearful that if we don't think of ways to make sure that we have ongoing funding towards those. And so I'm hoping that that's at least thought of as how we do that. And I'm hoping that maybe we look at ways to structure how we fund ourselves for ongoing capital projects that aren't classically educational in nature. Maybe a portion of proceeds of ticket sales or a portion of proceeds of that is earmarked into a fund or something. That's something we can do as a board to make sure that policies are put into place. Maybe renting spaces to vendors, that sort of thing. That said, I know that teachers, we have a good problem in that teachers are running out of rooms. That's a good problem to have. If you're in an industry or a business and you've got more business you can handle, that's a good thing, except you got to figure out how you're going to handle it. And so I agree with Ms. Baker that we need to think about how that will structure those. And sometimes it's thinking outside the box. And I hesitate to say this, but I've never actually had a conversation with administration about it, but if maybe rotating times of starts such that a room is available for different start times. Maybe school starts at 8 for some and 10 for others, and you have 2 extra hours and you use the same space in different groups. Staggering might give you the room fully yours for those periods, and you could have storage to keep your things separate. That may be an option. Or I really hesitate to ask this, and that is, potentially the merger of community schools in such a way that you had K1 and 2 in one, and then 3, 4, and 5 in another, and then 6, 7, and 8 in another, and then the high school, and really unify this community in that way. 40 years ago we had transportation issues and people walked to school, and community schools were largely because of that. But wouldn't it be great if all of our schools, if you leveled the playing field and everybody socioeconomically was all equalized in each system, and you had all of the teachers that were specialists, say, in K1 and 2. Now, I say it wouldn't be great conceptually. It may not be great when you really sit down and do the math about how maybe it costs more, maybe it'd be cheaper. But there are things outside the box that we might be able to do to address some of the teaching, the actual aspects associated with teachers having classrooms, rather than just more bricks and mortar, which are very expensive. But maybe utilizing the spaces we have more efficiently and thinking differently about how schools attended. Virtual classrooms are picking up everywhere. And one thing I'd like to talk about at our board meeting sometime is about, open source textbooks. We spend a couple $100,000 a year, I think, on textbooks. And a lot of the teachers and other boards, when we've been to those meetings, talk about how they've gone to that, and it allowed them, especially with some of the new changes in education and Common Core stuff that maybe isn't always easy for us to attach to. I think kids need to be able to have access to things like bring their own devices so that they can learn electronics and things that we're using day in, day out, like iPads and things like that. Maybe could put more of those in their hands. But all those things aside, I think those are other ways we can work as a system to prioritize and save monies to be able to accomplish this. The big issue I did want to address before I get to that, the enclosed entry at Harold McCormick. We've talked about that a lot, and if it needs to be done, I think we can do that much like we are talking about here. We have a budget, we have dollars, we've had plans, but as I remember our discussions, it seemed as if we had discussions about trying to do a lot with it, like the Cadillac plan, or we weren't really satisfied with it. We might want to look at just enclosing it and maybe see if we can afford that. But it needs to be part of a structure as a whole. If you take $5 million and you spend it on little projects, you'll never get the big project done. And if you spend it all on one project that has the potential to break the bank because of not knowing what you're going to get into, I think we run into problems there too. So I think the bigger issue is when you do have a very rare and unique opportunity to have a fairly sizable dollar figure, you then have to prioritize what's the likelihood of receiving that again, and how can we then make certain that we make the most out of it for our system, because we'll probably be able to get small projects done later, but not big projects. So that's kind of what's got me torn between all these, and I do think that it would be nice if we had more, but we don't. And we promised City Commission when we sat down with them that we would prioritize. Well, I don't remember promising that we would say that it would be a classroom first, because it may cost 3 times as much to ever get back to that. I do remember saying we would prioritize. And I think that from what I'm hearing, that the only way we can prioritize classrooms at T.A. Duggar and do it with fiduciary responsibility and integrity to not raising the total cost over time and just passing it on to our grandkids is to actually go ahead and remove the home stands. Then we could do the classrooms at T.A. Duggar. But then we're going to have people that are upset, and one of the many things that draws this community together is our stadium at Brown Childress. It's a hub on Friday nights, and it has the potential to offer so much more to this community. I didn't like the location change originally, just visually it wasn't as appealing. But I think we're pretty far down the road on the rails to trails thing, and I think that it has the potential to blend in with some city projects there. I wondered about whether the east to west of the sun rising and falling, if that's going to have any effect, but I think it actually improves it, because right now it's in their eyes at part of the games. So some of those things that change maybe are better, but when you were talking about using the West G Street location with the old hospital, the part of me that harkens back to my days of going and sitting in Carter County Memorial's waiting room while the pink ladies watched over me and my mom was come down and get me if I wasn't doing my homework. That part of me wants to see that property be utilized for something. But at the same time, there's no parking there. And and that was one of the things. When you were talking about parking, it looks like we got additional spaces, which really surprised me. But I was also thinking that it's not that hard to move our buses to another lot and use that. I don't think. I think we have spaces at other places that we could park the buses at night and then have the students there. It doesn't have to be where they are, right? You could find a place for buses we've got so many other places, it's just we need them all in that one spot. If we needed more student parking, we might not have to build the parking lot as big if we could just move the buses and allow those to be used for students. Still kind of wanting to know a little bit more about the security and how that affects the security plan to have the stadium located where you have it, and also how it affects the security at T.A. Duggar to change that around, since that's, again, reprioritizing. 30, 40 years ago, we weren't really thinking school security the way we do today.
I would start by saying the one positive about the current design is, even if we were able to do something to the track in its current location, it would be much easier, and I think all of us in administration would feel much more comfortable leaving that open for public use. When you include that with a stadium and you have the turf, that makes all of us a little nervous, just from vandalism. That's not to say it couldn't be vandalized in the current proposed location. But this allows you to lock it up, secure it when it's not being utilized for a team, but still people have access to the track. I did want to address one thing about the track, if I could, real quick. Yesterday, Ed O'Hara from CHA Sports talked a little bit about that. Before we had the meeting, we went down and we walked the existing track. And he gave us a couple of different options if we leave it where it is. One is you could take up the surface that's there now, mill it, clean it, whatever they do, and then put that back down and then rubberize it. He said the taking up and then the rubberizing is, I think, $150,000, and the asphalt removal would be somewhere around $400,000. Okay? So then he also said, well, you could go in. He said, I think you're pretty close on your dimensions. I think we could tweak a few things and straighten it out. But he said we could go in, and everywhere there are cracks, we'd cut those cracks out, fill that area. That would cost you about $50,000. Then you could rubberize it for $150,000. So at that point in time, we would have $200,000 invested, as opposed to $550 or closer to $400,000. Now he said the problem with the patching is it'll last about 10 years, and then you'd probably have to do the same thing. Well, the rubberized part, no matter which way you do it, he said would last about 10 years. So in 10 years, we'd be facing, okay, are we going to have to re-rubberize it for $150,000? So my thought is, if there's a way to salvage the track that we have, we patch it and are able to do the track for $200,000, in 10 years, if we have to do that again, we still come out ahead of where we would be if we completely redid the track. So for a 20-year solution based on the financial situation we're in, that sounds like a potential viable option, and that certainly makes it a lot more doable, than the $500,000 number. So, obviously we would try our best, and we'll continue to try our best to stretch every single penny of this from donation, whether it be from building materials or, monetary donations. We're going to try to stretch every penny of this as far as we can.
Second question on follow-up, I guess, is on donation. We've mentioned donations, and I think it'll be a lot easier to get people to donate towards an athletic complex than a classroom. So how do we start anything to get people to ask, are you willing to donate, or should we? I feel like that I believe there are people out there that are willing to contribute to that, but I don't think that they'll be willing to contribute to the other. And I wonder if there's a way to separate it so that they can donate towards one project to make it nice at their desire and whim, rather than take away from the classroom aspects. Is there a way that we can raise money toward a project if we roll it in together?
Absolutely. I think anyone this is the way it's currently set up, anyone that makes a donation to the school system can request how that money is used, and we've always honored that request, obviously. So I think the answer to that question is, most definitely yes. But at this point,
donations based on memorial gifts that it started. Mrs. Wilson has set up an account for that. So a person can earmark what they want the money used for. Heavens to Betsy, we're tickled to death.
My appeal to the public would be, to donate toward whatever your goal is, but if you can get us some more, we can maybe make it even better.
Absolutely.
But along those lines, we have only so much money, and we do have multiple projects, so we have to look at all of them and kind of see how can we spend the money to fulfill all those needs at once. I appreciate the work of the committee. It's nice to be able to get some feedback and see what's going on here.
What I would say is we're committed to, again as an administration, to make sure we get 2 of these projects completed. With the amount of money we have, and the logistics that we've already discussed, the 2 that fit closer in the budget would be the stadium and the band room classroom addition at the high school.
And are you saying there's no way to get all 3 done with that much
$5
money?
million?
There's no way.
Sir.
Absolutely.
There's not.
I thought the track, do you mind, Richard, flipping that over where the option with the one that you all favor at this time? That one? Okay. I thought that the track was just automatically figured in, but it's not, is it? The 3 point.
Unfortunately, when you look at the budget, when you look at the budget that we have right now, the $5 million, if we include the track and the stadium project, we have one of 2 choices. We spend closer to $4.5 million on the stadium, which leaves us $500,000, and we can't complete another project. If you take the track out of the project, and plus, when you put the track in, again, to do it the right way would be about $4.5 million, maybe even closer to $5, to build a stadium that everyone's pleased with. If you take the track component out, you're able to do the stadium the way it should be, and it allows you to complete the band room, classroom addition. If we include the track and we try to stay around the 3 to 3.5 on that facility, it's going to be a facility that people are not proud of. It's not. It's going to be, in a lot of ways, people would look and say, why did you spend the money this way? It won't be something that the community is proud of. What we're proposing is the best way to make sure that the projects we complete are quality projects.
What are you going to do? Are you going to make parking down here where you see the track? Right, yeah, where the track is, yeah. You're going to put a ball field, aren't you?
No, we would leave the
We're
track.
leaving everything.
We would leave the track as is, and we would build parking. Right now, this is basically a dead area between the baseball field, softball field, and the track. There's, of course, a small parking lot right here behind the gym, but we would convert this dead space to parking. And this is a parking comparison. This is what we currently have on campus, a total of 513. This would be the count if we were able to build that parking lot in the back. So we would increase parking on campus by about 90 spots, 90 parking spaces.
So, when they laid this track, they laid it incorrectly, didn't they?
I think it was correct at the
At
time.
the time.
It was okay at the time.
220 meter.
They didn't maintain it. We haven't maintained it. It was in yards back then. Now we're in meters. Metric conversion.
Used a lot.
It is used a lot, and it's used a lot for the community, which is
Yeah.
why I think that we need to remember that when the city gives us this type of if we're going to invest in it, we're also going to return back to the community, because the tax that we get a half-cent sales tax on, I'm currently paying in Bristol and Kingsport and Johnson City every time that I have to go over there because we can't host here. And that was part of why I was wondering about the track, although that's not going to add up to, $100,000 anytime soon. But there's a lot of other things. I know we have the Relay for Life, and the community likes that, and we have car shows around the track. I think if we put a new track, we'll have to tell them you can't drive on it, but you have to go around the edges of it. And but maybe some of those things the city might remember is that because we have hosted those types of things, we have cracks in our track, and we've brought monies into the city every weekend when people came and they spent their money these other areas, or they wanted to live here because they came and saw it. It is, you can't unwind all this. And I guess the thing is, I'm challenged by the idea of I want to spend for educational, but I don't think that not having a strong program in this is not educational. Studies have shown that children who are involved in athletics or band do better in school. They stay more engaged. They have more sense of community, and that's what employers over and over tell us when kids come out of college, is that they can't work in a group. Well, I'll tell you, the best way to learn how to work in a group is out there in some team sport or some team occupation or event, and nothing motivates these children more than seeing those things come to fruition in these events. And they do better in school. They're more engaged. They're going to have higher scores. They're going to be more. There's going to be more safety when they take school pride. They're not going to want to go against their school as much. And I think that's kind of why it's important to say this is academic in nature, in that it supports the academic programs through those means.
And I think that sometimes, I'm not a big track person, but I see the value in the children that are out there and what that program means to them. Same way with softball, baseball, tennis, all of those. That may not be my thing, per se, but I still value that. And I know that is part of the educational experience that we as a system we talk all the time about educating the whole child. Well, if we leave this component out, we're doing a disservice to this community.
And childhood obesity is one of the things that Congress has gone after. It's something that we've national initiative to reduce it. So, part of that starts, but you're not going to do it with this lunch thing that we've done where we're going to, have fat-free foods and stuff that they're just going to throw in the garbage, and we're spending more money on it, which, I think it's silly to think that we're going to change behaviors there. You're going to be much more proactive if you're going to get people involved with athletics and make them enjoy it. I saw one of my children who was struggling a little bit with couch potato syndrome get involved with T.A. Duggar football. And I saw him suddenly go from being a couch potato to like, I can't have that, Dad. I can only have water, and he would want to go and run and lift weights. And I thought, what a great inspiration. But you know what else? I saw his interest in school, his scores come up. Now, he decided to go to band this year, and he's doing great in that too, and it's inspiring him. He really came about by that, and I saw it firsthand. But that's what studies say happens. So I just don't want people to think that we're building a football stadium and it has nothing to do with their education. It really does, and we need to be able to prioritize and make it happen. I agree with, I'd like to see 3 out of 3 projects done, not 2 out of 3, but.
I agree with that, Alex, and I'm sure all of us participated in different things from tennis to track. I'd even tried track at one time, and tennis was my game. And I thought it was pretty good.
Got some good tennis courts, don't we?
And I participated with that. So all of us have participated in various activities. But when we get ready to go to college, the number one thing we have to do is take the what? We have to take the test.
Yeah.
So there again, and it does help with eating habits, and it helps with weight gain and all of that. It makes us more conscious of what we're doing. But two, what we told the public that we mainly wanted this fund for was for classrooms. And I'm sure our city people, they reminded us of that yesterday in the workshop, that when we came to them, we asked for classrooms. Now, it's not to say that this money can't go other places, but I think the very first thing it should be used for is the classrooms first, and then go down to this complex, which I think is a great thing. And like I said, we all participated in certain sports, and I'm sure if we weren't as heavy and didn't have age, a little bit of age on us, we'd be out there doing it again. I know I would, because I really enjoyed it. And I just think that to keep our faith, and when we go back and ask people for donations, they say, well, when we give you this donation, is it going to be used for what I stipulated for? Or when you get it, are you going to change and use it for what you feel is most important? So in them giving the system this money, their first objective was classrooms, because that's what we were stressing. The second could be our stadium. And I would like to see a copy, if we could make maybe a smaller version of those plans similar to that Ms. Armstrong has laying there. And let us look at them. Maybe we can come out with something outside the box, just as you came out with that, with the location of the stadium. I like that better than any place that I've seen so far as where you want to put the stadium. Now, we didn't start out with that place. We put it here. We tore down the old stadium. We put it there. So why can't we look and see if we can't possibly get the 3? But first start with your classroom, because this is what we told the people we were going to use the money for. So let's do what we said we were going to do.
Okay, we had
And then go down.
I'm sorry. We wanted to keep the meeting kind of short. Mr. Alexander has something to say. I have something I want to say.
Okay.
Then we'll have our meeting next week. Mr. Alexander?
To begin with, let's go back again in history as to what we told the public we were going to do. Classrooms were part of that, but not totally. I would like to paraphrase and almost verbatimly give you what the mayor said when he was recognizing our system academically for being exemplary. He said, priority does not necessarily mean the order of completion, end quote. And a number of people in here heard that. So one of those circumstances, I find it odd that there was somewhat of a halt put and no recommendation made yesterday. So again, we're not being dishonest with the public from the very outset of this stuff. And remember, folks, when the city gave us the money, we earned the money by going out and getting the half-cent sales tax passed. And ironically, some people who are so vociferous about telling us how or dictating how to spend that money were actually against the half-cent sales tax. So I think it's important to look at that and look at the history of this and ask that we be trusted with doing what we did with the 6.5. When I asked the city council members if they were pleased with the 11 classrooms, the 2 gyms, and the 2 roofs and the facade at the high school, they said they were very pleased. So I can't understand why we can't be trusted to recommend something again out of the money that we've received. Thank you.
When we in 08, we came up, I think Mr. Alexander actually was the first person who came up with the idea of approaching the city council about allowing us a referendum on the half-cent sales tax. As not surprising, we did not have 100% board support on that. Mr. Cooter, Mr. Birchfield, and myself, 3 months prior to running for re-election, stood at each of the elementary schools as well with teachers. My nephew, who was in kindergarten, held up a sign that said, "I'm worth half a cent." We were out there asking people to vote themselves a half-cent sales tax for capital projects for the school system. Well, we all know that that passed overwhelmingly. And the people who were voting were parents and teachers and people who understand the need for capital projects. So we got the money and we did amazing things with it and we stretched it very far, and I think we're very good stewards of the money. So this summer, here we were again, we had the opportunity to ask the city to extend the half-cent sales tax money to us. Again, it did not receive all board support. I know that I know that Dr. May and Mr. Isaac spent a deal of time talking to city council members to let them know that we supported these. I know that not everyone has agreed with extending the half-cent sales tax because the city council members were pretty nervous about it. And at the end of the day, I've said this, I'd like $1 for every time I've said this. If this board would ever choose to work together, we could have had $9 million and we wouldn't be sitting here picking and choosing. And it's very easy to say we're not keeping our word, and it's very easy to say that we've given the wrong impression. I've been probably the person who's talked about classrooms longer than anybody else. When I was at the last re-election, I talked about classrooms at T.A. Duggar. That's the project that's nearest and dearest to my heart, but I understand that we can't do everything. And I'm not going to rest, and Dr. May said this, and I know that you ladies agree with this, until we get classrooms at T.A. Duggar. We just can't do everything right now. And we can't build where there's no room. We've looked at this. We came up when 5 years ago or 4 years ago, or whenever it is, my brain is shutting down now. But, you know, instead of, I know this, Baker, you want us to rebuild, build a new west side. And, you know, that was a great thing. We didn't have the space for it. But we've done well with what we've, you know, with the money we've had. And it made everybody happy, no. But at the end of the day, I think we've been responsible. And we've never misled City Council. When we talked about doing all of this, we were asking for $9 million, which would have allowed us to. Then even at $7 million, we felt like we could do everything. $5 million, we can't. And as much as I want to build, you know, the classrooms and do everything, we have what we have, and we have to be careful with it. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we all just continue to look at things, pray about things. I'm in the community as well, and I am hearing that people want, you know, they want a stadium, they want their kids to have a safe place to play, and they want more room. And I had somebody at my email at work today, I've had all kinds of emails going, I'm a band parent, you know, are we going to get this? You know, we're so excited, are we going to do this? I'm hearing this rumor, I'm hearing this, I saw this on the news. So as for every person who's against it, there's that one or more who are for it. So what I would suggest we all do is we just take a minute, take a breath, pray about it, think about it, We'll have a board meeting next week. I don't think anything, I know we had initially planned to take the committee's recommendation, but the committee doesn't have one, so there's really nothing to do on that. The committee's going to meet in 2 weeks, and then we can have a called meeting and we can decide what to do. But they're not going to make any drawings until we give them a direction. So Mr. Weems isn't going to give us detailed drawings until then.
On this item on the agenda, I'm going to ask that it be.
That's just what I said. We don't have anything to do on it, so I'll pull it.
it.
Well, I wish you'd
I don't
listen to me
listen a lot.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I'm
I'm
going to
glad
pull
you're
it.
doing
Well,
that.
there's nothing to recommend. It's been a long day. Let's dismiss, and we'll see everybody next Thursday. Thank you.
Want to have prayer?
Mhm.
Pray on.